Welcome to the Corporate Storytelling Webcast. Last summer, my wife and I took our daughter, who had just graduated from high school, on her graduation trip. We got to go to Colorado, Buena Vista, Colorado. She wanted to go river rafting. Never been, but our guide, Zach, convinced us it was going to be safe until we got to a particular rapid named the Widowmaker. And that kind of scared me just a little bit. And he said it's going to be the most challenging one on the course. And he said, we have a strategy. What we're going to do is we're going to paddle right at it. He goes, I need all three of you on the left side and all three of you on the right side paddling as hard as you can. We're going to go right through it. That is the best way to attack the Widowmaker. We were on the Arkansas River. He said, if you let up and you decide not to paddle full speed, he goes, we're going to get pushed over to the side. You'll notice there's a little whirlpool over there, and we're going to get stuck there, and we'll have to let the next couple of boaters go by, and we'll enjoy the show, but we won't get to enjoy the rapids. If, for any reason, we were to fall out of the boat, he goes, there's a spot right downriver on the left. I'll meet you there. We'll regroup, and then we'll be ready to attack the next rapid down the river. Time out. Why did I use that story to start this program called Corporate Storytelling? Well, thought it would make sense to open with a story, but also a story has to have a point that ties to the presentation that we're delivering. It can't just be a random story, and you can't just say, wow, that was great, but what was the point? Here's the point. Here's where I was going with it, and the takeaway for you as we get into today's webcast. We have a couple of options. We have the option to learn how to tell stories and start incorporating them into our future presentations. We're going to attack it and go straight on, just like Zach had us do with the Widowmaker on the Arkansas River. If you chicken out and you decide, you know what, I don't know if that storytelling is going to work here at my company, I don't see a lot of other people doing it, then you're going to get stuck in the whirlpool over on the side. You're going to watch others tell great stories and others who are influencing and really persuading the audience members. And if at any point you try the stories and they don't work out quite the way you wanted, you fall out of the boat, then we'll regroup and we'll try it again, because I can promise you that this webcast will help you, and the concept of telling stories will help you deliver better presentations. My name is Kevin Karshik, and today I am joined by my friend and my colleague, Bill Krieger. Bill, say hello to everybody.
Hey, everybody. Glad to be here. Hey, Kevin and I have been working together and great friends now for, 10 plus years, I think, Kevin. And so grateful to be here and love the story. Kevin, I'm thinking of those times when I was leading teams and we were about to attack a project with some fear and trepidation. And I'm thinking that story would have been a good one to say, hey, let's just go right at it. And if we fail, there's a place to regroup and try it again. It's not an end all. So yeah, love the story.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, we want to welcome everybody. We've got so many different people. Bill, we had over 150 people register. And unfortunately, we can only let in 100 people to observe the webcast. So we always overbooked like the airlines used to do, and hope that a few people didn't show up. So if we're right at that edge, which it looks like we are, it's a full house. So Bill, anybody on this list that kind of jumps out at you as some of the friends and colleagues that we've worked with in the past?
Boy, there is a bunch of them here, and it's always surprising to me, Kevin, of how we have reached out and been a part of so many great organizations. And, you know, we're seeing some of those now in our list here of, boy, we've got a huge group. Hey, welcome to you all. Welcome to all the groups that are here. And we've worked with all of them, and we love them all, don't we, Kevin? And
For
really
sure.
making a huge impact. Hey, as we go through this webcast together, we want certainly your questions, your comments, any of your feedback. We'll let you use the chat window to make that happen. You know, there's so many of us on with 150 people, Kevin. We're not going to let everybody jump in at once. Certainly jump in that chat window and communicate with us. Kevin and I will watch that and keep an eye on it. Yeah. So hey, tell us where you're coming, where you dialed in from. Let's find out where everybody's at and see just how far across the country, and maybe internationally, right, Kevin? Because we
For
do.
sure. Oh yeah, they're very well. We've got two. So we have Kelly from San Antonio, and then right after that we have Sundar from India. So those are the first two
Yeah.
people. So talk about some extremes there.
Yeah. And Claire is in Ireland, right? Look at that. Yeah, so's Karen. Yeah, and yeah, we even have Puerto Rico. Oh my goodness, that's on my bucket list.
Joe from Dubai. Yeah, Trish from New York. Fabiana from Houston.
Yeah,
Rona from Manchester, UK.
look at this. We've got them from anywhere from Chile to Brazil, and even as far away as El Paso, Texas. That's about 8 hours of driving for me in San Antonio, for sure.
And Bill, Claire has a correction for you. She said Scotland is not Ireland. They're different countries.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, Ireland, yes. Yeah. In fact, I just saw a place where you could take a nice trip to Ireland and see all the sights. And yeah, I absolutely want to get there. We've got a good friend over there too, don't we?
Oh yeah, one of our colleagues, Paul Slattery, who delivers a lot of classes for iSpeak. So great partner. Sheboygan, Wisconsin, Ron is representing there, and David in Pennsylvania, and we've got a lot of folks from Fort Worth. Bill, where are you at?
Yeah, I'm in San Antonio, Texas. Yeah, South Central Texas. And we love it. We came here about 25 years ago thinking maybe we'd stay 3 years, but we just fell in love with the people, the culture. In fact, even all my children and grandchildren are right here in San Antonio with us. So pretty deep roots for us, Kevin.
Awesome. I'm in Georgetown, Texas, which is just north of Austin, Texas. So we have got a really great group here with us. Stay interacting. Bill and I can see your chat, everything that you guys just chatted with you. We see it. You can't see each other's, and that's kind of the way the webcast is set up. So Bill, tell us what we're going to do today. We've got a really packed hour.
We do. We have a full schedule here. We're going to take a look at really creating memorable stories. And that is absolutely key. Kevin, I've had the opportunity to speak to groups as big as 1,500 on several occasions. And I know the struggle of trying to connect with that large of a group and to move them in unison to an outcome, a desired outcome. I've also been an audience member and know that it can be easily distracted when there's that much commotion going around.
What did you say, Bill?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's so much going on. So yeah, let's come up with what really makes a memorable story. Let's also take a look at story situations, because where we tell a story and why we will tell a story, it doesn't mean that we can always do it, depending on the situation.
Sure.
Obviously, if I'm going to a board of directors, I'm not sure they want to hear even a great rafting story. And we want to make sure that it's meeting the need of our purpose and our audience and really why we're telling it. Yep. We're also going to look at 3 different types of stories specifically, which would be the who am I story, the who are we story, and a lesson learned story. These are 3 very powerful templates that we can use to really influence an audience and make it memorable. We'll share some other types too, right?
For sure. Well, for sure. And we'll get into those. And I said, we've got homework for them too.
Yeah, always.
We're not going to just say, hey, these are the stories and, good luck. No, we're going to challenge you guys to write your stories and use this as that launching pad to say, all right, I've been wanting to do this. I need to understand why and where to do it. Now I understand how to do it. And then Bill and I are going to challenge you to jump in and do it.
Yeah.
Bill, I want to start us off with a quote, and then we're going to get everybody back involved with us here. This is a quote from Lee Bowman. He says, leaders who tell stories can change the way people think, create a shared vision, as well as grant comfort and hope. What about you, as we sit there and we think about stories, what makes a great story? Give me one characteristic that jumps out for you.
Well, what makes a great story for me is that I get to see what you're trying to teach me in real life. I get to visualize characters and conversations and work getting done, and it's very engaging at that level, really pulling in all of my creativity and so forth. Hey, let's have some of them share with us too, Kevin. Yeah. Let's ask our participants here. Jump in your chat window. What makes a great story for you? And I like that story that has a great moral message, if you will, that just resonates with my core value. So yeah,
Sure.
jump in here, group. Share with us what makes a story great and memorable.
Yeah, now some of you used initials to get in. So R. Salisbury, that's all I can refer to you as. You said a lesson in the story. I think that's going to be key.
Yeah, and I also like this. I like funny, yeah, from Taylor. I like funny ones that grab your attention. I am too. There is something very human, I guess, with humor that it lets me connect with you, that you're real, and I can relate to it very well.
Yeah, and we always say, Bill, that it also depends on your topic. So what's the topic and does humor fit? And it also depends on what else.
Yeah, who you're talking to.
Yeah, who's that audience?
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm with you also, Rana. I believe that the biggest impactful stories are personal stories, one like Kevin just shared with his family on the rafting trip. We can tell other kinds of stories, but for me, those are the ones that are most impactful. I get a lot of passion behind it when I'm telling it because I kind of relive it.
That's what I felt when I was saying that story. It's like I could feel it I was on the Arkansas River. I could feel it as I was telling that story. Felt good for me. Ron had talked about the emotional connection. And Ron, maybe I didn't think about this until you just mentioned that. The emotional connection would be with the audience, but it could also be for the speaker, which is the side I hadn't really thought of. And our Salisbury is Rochelle. Rochelle, thanks for correcting that for us.
Yeah. Andrea, I like this one too, where you say it has to be true and relatable to most people. That's a good point. Now we can tell some fictional stories, can we not, Kevin? And they can, fables are stories. But the ones again that really are driving memorable and impactful will be those true stories, personal, and eliciting an emotional response from your audience.
Yeah, Stacy talked about stories that sound authentic and are not forced. I think that's also key. I think, Bill, when we coach people in our classes, one of those characteristics that we're always wanting to coach people on is that authenticity, how to be genuine when you're presenting. And so, Stacy, that doesn't just go for storytelling, that goes for any type of presentations that we give. It's good
Yeah.
stuff. All right,
Yeah.
so Bill, that's a really great starting place for us. And I want to move to the next question and let's get everybody involved here. And it's why? Why do we share stories? And maybe you've got something that jumps right out at you. If you do, go to that chat window. And Bill, if I asked you before I bring the list up, and I want to help kind of reel this in for the audience, what jumps out at you? What's one thing that really stands out for you when we say why we want to tell stories in business?
Well, we tell stories in business because we can get buy-in with the story. And that, I mean, most of the time I'm trying to be persuasive with my team and I want them to get that vision. And in the process of that, I want them on board 100%. I want them promoters making this work and fully involved and feel that emotional connection to it with a unified goal that we're going to work on as a team. And I find storytelling is really a very strong tool to make that happen and to get that buy-in very early.
Yep, group, hey, let's have you go to the chat window, pick a word off of this list or a phrase. And so we had Rochelle say make a connection and Rhonda right after said the exact same thing to make a connection. So two of you were thinking exactly alike. What else, what from this list or anything else that jumps out at you, what's a word as to why? For me, I'm going to go off of the memorable. I'm going to pick that. I don't know if that's on this list. It's got to be here somewhere. But at the memorability, is that a word, Bill? Memorability?
It is now. I mean,
Okay. It's
we'll
official.
add it. Yeah.
It's official. And the reason for that, and I'm sure you've run into this too. I've had people at some of our clients that will go, I remember you spoke at our meeting and you told that Guitar Hero story. They don't remember my name and they might not remember all the key points from my presentation, but they remembered a story that I had told. And that to me, it's not just a random story. The Guitar Hero story had a point to it. And if I can make my message more memorable by incorporating stories, that's one of those for me.
Yeah, and Claudia agrees 100% with you. She said memorable was the big one, certainly for her.
Got it. So we hear buy-in, values, and I can't name everybody's name, but Carolyn said buy-in, Joe said values, Andrea said inspire. Fabiana said inspire. Stacy said to build trust. Sue said alignment. And Taylor said inspire and encourage. So lots of good stuff. So we've got the reasons why. And then we get to the benefits. I mean, the real benefit. And Bill, you've got some research on this in terms of when we think about the left side of our brain, which has got a lot of the black and white and a lot of the statistics and systematic, and then the right side of our brain, which adds a little bit more of the creativity and some of the emotions. Tell me a little bit about this research, and then let's talk about the importance of why we want to tell these stories.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, I like this because most of the time my wife is saying I'm brainless, and now I know that at least I have two and possibly three brains that I can counteract with this. Yeah, we know that business runs on data, right, Kevin? We're punching numbers, we're sharing numbers, and the struggle with the data coming at us is that in reality, it starts to get a little boring, and we start asking so what or the why. All we're really engaging at this part in for our audience is just this left half of the brain where it's reasoning, it's the math, it's the data. And this, what we want to do is really get the whole brain approach. And the best way to do that, in fact, this from the Harvard Business Review, I'm going to share this with you. I want to get it right, Kevin, so I'm going to read it to our attendees here. Just a quote from one of their studies about how to motivate or move people from point A to point B, and what's the strongest way to do that. He says there's two problems, because usually we do rhetoric, and they're saying there's two problems with rhetoric. First is that the people you're talking to have their own set of authorities, statistics, and experiences. While you're trying to persuade them, they're arguing with you in their own heads. And I know that's happening. You can see it on their faces, right? Second, if you do succeed in persuading them with your rhetoric, you've only done so on an intellectual basis, that left-hand side.
Yep.
That's not good enough because people are not inspired to act by reason alone. I had to think about that because I know there's times when, you know what, I know what I should be doing and I'm not doing it, even though I intellectually have the data behind it.
Because I don't feel like it, right?
I don't feel like it.
Yeah.
So here's what they say. The other way to motivate people, and ultimately a much more powerful way, is by uniting an idea with an emotion. And that's what storytelling can certainly do.
Yep. Randy's asking in the chat, is there a way that you could type some information about where that Harvard Business Review article is?
Oh boy, yeah, you're going to put me on the spot now, Kevin. I have it.
Okay.
And we'll see what we can do here, Randy. Yeah.
Yeah, Randy, let's follow up with you on that. Bill, if you could, Randy, if you could either provide Bill your email, or Bill, why don't you provide Randy your email, and then you guys can get in touch. I think that'll make sense.
Yeah, I'll do my email, and then they can reach out to me if they want.
Perfect. So Randy, reach out to Bill. I want to tie what you just said, Bill, to one of my favorite speakers and authors. Her name is Nancy Duarte. She says that stories are the emotional glue that connects an audience to an idea. And so we spent the first portion of our webcast today really laying down that foundation. What are some of the characteristics of a great story? Why do we tell stories? And then the importance of bringing that emotion in and tapping in really to both sides of our brain. So the next question to everybody, and this is an easy one, and we won't spend much time on it at all, go to that chat window. We get people in our classes all the time saying, I want to tell stories. I just don't have any stories, and I don't know where to find stories. So where do we find these stories? Let's go to that chat window. And Bill, what's your number one for you? I mean, what's your go-to? And do you have one, or is it really, does it depend?
Yeah, it's going to depend, but I'll tell you where I really like getting them is from listening to what other people have done and what they've said. So I'll listen to a story like yours of rafting, and it'll remind me of a personal experience that I've also had rafting, and I can take, it's just kind of it's kind of that trigger to bring back some memories of my own and create my own and bring up some of my own experiences. Yeah. But I'll also use yours because I might tell your story sometime and give you credit for it.
Or just take it and say it was me, right?
No, I'm not going to do
I'm
that.
kidding.
Yeah, I'm not going to embellish it and lie. That's not good storytelling.
No, I'm kidding. Candace was the first one in. She said everyday life, vacations. Michael said experiences and listening to others.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, right, Andrea? Sometimes we're not really sure where we're going to get stories. I'm not even sure what Kevin's got on his slide here. What's that box in the bottom right-hand corner with the antenna coming off? What the?
Yeah.
It looks like the old black and white when I was a kid, and ours even had a remote control, which was my dad with a rolled-up newspaper smack me in the back of the head telling me to change the channel. So yeah, pretty fun.
So I want to give Rona full credit for this. So I'm actually copying and pasting her response to us in the chat window. So here's Rona. She said people, books, radio, TV, social media. Rona, that was a really good list. So I wanted to give you full credit and copied and pasted it there into the chat for everybody else to see. And Bill, the other one, you and I, we talk about this a lot about history. I think that's another great place to go look. And I love using historical examples. We'll talk a little bit about that here. I've got a great one coming up of Kellogg's when they were launching their famous cornflakes brand in India. And so I want to share that, but history can also mean something else. What's your thoughts on the history side of this for storytelling?
Yeah, and I love to read historical books and so forth, love to look back in history, and because history has a tendency to repeat itself and we can learn from those lessons. It doesn't, though, have to be hundreds of years ago that we pull up a historical story. Group, our historical story for my team might be the last project we just worked on, and any of the successes or the challenges that we had along the way that we've learned from.
Yep.
That I can easily then say, hey, we're at this little bit of a crossroads right here, but we were there in our last project. Let's look at that and see how we handled it and then apply it to what we are here. So historical could be last month. It could even be yesterday as far as that goes.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I like the idea, though. Diana B had just put that in the chat window about inspirational thought leaders and speakers, and we can definitely get ideas from them as well. So we've got lots of great sources. Now let's dive into those three stories. And I really believe this. I think everybody has a story, and how do we tell that story? And so, Bill, we're going to be talking about a couple of different stories, and I'll have you jump into the first structure here in a second. Here are the stories. We're going to talk about the who am I story. We have to tell these frequently in meetings where we're having to introduce ourselves to an audience that doesn't know us, or to a group that's new to who we are. And so the who am I story, that's a big one. Maybe you're interviewing, that would be a story. Somebody's gonna say, well, tell me about yourself. And you'll have to tell this. The second is a who are we story. And this could be the organization as a whole. And so you sit there and you're gonna have to talk about your company. It could be your department in terms of the who are we. And so thinking about that, my group, our department, or our organization, when somebody asks about who we are and what we do. And these are just three prompts here. Our mission, our values, our vision could be some things that we incorporate in here. So Bill, set us up here. What are some ideas? We want to tell the who am I. We want to tell the who are we. How do we structure these? Give me some thoughts on where we go, because I've got some ideas. I just don't know how to organize them.
Yeah, very good. And that's always the struggle. I have a story. I just don't know how to tell the story.
Yep.
And Kevin, my experience is that sometimes I'm in the story and I get lost in my own story because, and then I'm, okay, what's my point? Yeah, so first and foremost, we want to know what the point is we want to make. And then, of course, get a story that helps get that point across. Structurally, you've got one up here that's one of my favorites, which is the change. And anytime we're telling a story and we reach that point where change is taking place, it's a huge engagement. The audience is like, okay, what did you do? How are you going to deal with this? So using your experience, what you've learned, how it changed you, or how you changed how you were doing a process. And this little format you have here with a nice opening, what was going on, why did we go this direction, how did it actually change us, and a nice close is a nice little structure to get us through a who am I. Here's who I am, here's why I'm this way, and here's how I will go moving forward. is a nice structure to say, this happened. Now, this is a great time also to use not just a success story, but also a failure story.
Yeah,
And
those are hard to tell sometimes.
yeah, those are tough to tell, but those are very revealing, and they connect well with your audience, especially if they don't know you. And I know you're going to go, I don't want to talk about when I failed, but what happened and what did you learn from it and how did you change as a result of it is a great way to describe who you are without doing bullet points, right? Yeah. Which, I mean, nobody wants that.
Yeah, don't regurgitate your resume to me is not what I'm wanting when I ask a question about. So tell me about yourself. So I do love the structure. Just to kind of dive into it for a minute, the opening I think is key, and really thinking about what's that first line that you're going to say. And I always critique this when we're doing this in our classes, when somebody says, let me tell you a story. And it's like, wait a minute, you don't have to start with, let me tell you a story. You can just start with the story. And so really thinking about what that first line's going to be as you jump right into the story, using what you just described here as a structure, and then having some kind of closure, some kind of a wrap up to it. This is one of 4 structures we're going to teach right now that we can use for a who am I or the who are we story. And so the change, here it is, your experience, what you learned, how you changed it, and the what, why, how works great.
It does.
Second would be a choice, something where you had to make a choice in your life. And this is a decision, a fork in the road. I've got to choose to go left or right. What am I going to choose? So what did I choose? And then ultimately, how does it come back and tie to a core value? And so using this structure here of situation, actions, and results is another great way to sit there and think about this. And what these structures do for us, and the first one you shared with us and the second one, is now I've got some bullet points that I can start to build with, and I'm not going to teach the bullet points. I'm going to use this to build the story. This becomes that structure. So I got my pen out, got my paper out, and I start bulleting the ideas, and then I'm going to write the story based on that. Any thoughts on this one as we have 2 more to share?
Yeah, just a real quick heads up on this one, group. Again, the real moment of connecting with the audience will be when you hit that fork in the road. Yep. So you want to get to that fork in the road fairly quickly. Don't give it too big of a buildup that the audience all of a sudden loses interest, because interest comes when you hit the fork. Am I going right or am I going left? Or what am I going to turn around? What are we going to do? And then what were the results that tied into your core beliefs?
Yeah, no doubt. Let's branch off for just a brief second, because you brought up a good point about time. Get to the fork in the road so we don't have this story drag out. I think a good rule of thumb, just to kind of have some guidance, is 1 to 3 minutes for a story. And there's exceptions when they could be something that's shorter. It's a simple example. And there's definitely examples where it goes longer. But usually the ones that start to go longer than the 3 minutes are the ones when we start looking at our watch and when I start reaching over my phone. And so really thinking of when I build my stories, 1 to 3 minutes in length makes a great story when I'm injecting the story into my corporate presentations. What are your thoughts on that? And then lead that into our next structure.
Very good. Because, and I think, Kevin, it also goes on where I'm using it within my presentation. So if I'm using it in my opening, like you did here, we don't want a huge opening and then there's no time for your content, your argument, and your persuasion to take place. You just spent the whole time telling a story. Yep. And again, what situation am I in and who my audience is will depend on all of that, how long I'm going to tell it. Well, the other reason that we want to be careful on timings is because another great format here is what we call the common thread. And I've seen, Kevin, this one works so well, where someone is introducing themselves and they actually share 3 very short, very different stories. Something maybe from their childhood that then went into their early years of in the professional realm to now where they are today. And they had 3 different experiences and a common point that linked them all together. So I really like the common thread. And one of the little tricks I've seen people do is that we listen to it and we're like, okay, and the common thread gets connected at the end where all of a sudden it's like a pow, and you go, oh my goodness, that was amazing. how that just worked.
Yeah, and I'm going to share this. We did this at our Christmas party for iSpeak. And Russ had us all go around the table and share 3 experiences. What did they have in common? And then how did they tie back to some core? And we really boiled it down to a core word or phrase. He wrote all those words and phrases up on the board. And at the end of it, it was just really powerful. I learned so much. I've known you for over 10 years, and I still learned about your life in those stories. And they were all short, but it was so powerful. I feel like we really took the knowledge of each other to the next level. And so it was a great team building exercise, but also a great structure that we can use in business presentations.
Yeah, and it's not only a who am I, it then became a who are we.
Yep.
And we ended up with here's our story instead of just my story. It was very powerful.
It was very powerful. You just took the words. I said that same thing. It was very powerful. And
now
then,
timeline story, this one just makes sense. And I always like information that has logical flow and sequence to it. I don't like it jumping around. So this format with timeline is just, it's so logical. Here's the past, here's where we are now, here's what the future is. So here's my past experience, here's how it relates to where we are right now and what we're dealing with. And here's how I see us going forward and what the future can look like when we implement these things that we've learned. This is a really powerful one, and it's easy to use because, come on, past, present, future, that's a simple template to remember.
Yeah, for sure. This is one that really I use so much. I'm on the board at the Texas Baptist Children's Home in Round Rock, and I get to coach the moms on how to tell their story. And we use this structure probably 95% of the time as they talk about their past, which can really take you to tears. And we've got to really make sure that as they tell their stories that we don't dwell too much on it and bring people too far down. They talk about the present of what brought them to TBCH and where they're at and how it's changed their life, and then the future that they have planned in terms of going back to school and getting their families back together. It's just the structure works, and it's really powerful.
Now, you mentioned something here too that we need to, make a note of. I can tell a story that can have some pretty heavy emotion to it, but we don't want to leave our audience in that kind of a doom and gloom position. We want to bring hope and vision that things will get better. And so that's where I like this. I can tell of a sad past experience, but as I relate it to my current situation and what the future is, I want to paint that future with a little more light and less darkness.
No doubt. That's really good. Let's share an example here, Bill. Set us up on this video here. So we're going to watch a snippet, and it's just a snip of Michael Dell was doing a keynote presentation. It was an hour long. Talk about the story that we're about to hear.
Yeah, this is going to be a great example. And Joe, I like what you're saying here too. I want to jump into the chat window here real quick while we do up this video. Yeah, how about embedded stories where before finishing a story, we start another one and then another, then pass a message or a webinar, then resume both stories as if they were parentheses for the main topic. Yeah, these are what we would call like a parenthetical insert, right? We can start one and we get a couple of things running, and then we kind of leave that and we teach something, and then the conclusion of those stories solidify all of that parenthetical insert. It's another great tool, Joe. It's one that you'll have to practice. It can be a little tricky. Here we're going to see a video with Michael Dell, and we all know Michael Dell and his great success story. This is a clip from a big presentation that he's doing to a large audience. And this is kind of it's a great example of who am I? So who's Michael Dell? And as you watch it, be listening for what did you learn about Michael in this short little clip.
Touching every facet of our lives in unexpected ways. I remember when I was a small boy, my father brought home one of the very first calculators, and I was fascinated. It was able to take these fantastically complicated math problems, and the answer just popped out. It was like magic, but really not. because it's electronic. It's science that's like magic. I was overwhelmed by the possibility and the excitement of this, the power that this technology could bring to amplify my own intelligence and my own creativity. And fast forward 45 years and hundreds of millions of moments just like that, with increasingly powerful technologies driving human progress in profound ways. Every day, I'm astounded by the incredible things that our company can do to help our customers. But just like the calculator, it only feels.
All right, group, while we switch back into our slides here, let's have you jump in your chat. Anything that stood out that you learned about Michael Dell as far as who am I? Yeah, just put it in your chat panel and we'll take a look at them. Yeah, thank you, Sue. Yes, fascinated by the technology. Okay, good. Yeah, Karen, curious. Claire, very personal.
He was a curious kid. I like that, Karen.
I remember when my oldest son got his first calculator, he didn't even turn it on. Kevin, he read the manual. You remember those old TI calculators, graphing calculators came with a thick manual. He's middle school and he sat down and read the manual before he ever turned it on. I don't think I would have ever done that. And he turned it on and knew how to use it, which, you know, he's just a smart kid. He gets that from his mother, for sure.
I'm not sure I've ever read a manual. What is a manual?
I'm like, where's the pictures?
Yeah, so we've got some great stuff popping into the chat. We're glad you guys are interacting with us. But his passion about science, you know, the interest of seeing the childhood images David talked about in the background. So he had some really nice slides that complemented it, which, by the way, we have another class called Visual Storytelling, where we teach about building some great slides to complement our stories or complement our presentations. So Those are some of the things that we can do.
That's right. Oh. Slides are not to be read. Slides are to help you, not you commentate them.
Yeah, Michael demonstrated that really well in that video.
Yeah,
so we've got homework here, Bill.
Yep, we do. And here's what we want you to do. We want you to start documenting your stories. That's the key. And there's some real reasons for doing that, because if we don't document them, then the struggle gets that we start to lose context or we forget some of the details. I mean, I have that memory where I can hide my own Easter eggs, and I do. I'm still looking for them, by the way. And if I don't get it written down, I'm not going to remember. And in fact, you know, those glory days, they get more glorious every time I tell it.
Sure.
Pretty soon, it's not even close to the truth. So documenting them will be huge. What's nice also is that you get them up on the web or the cloud, and then you can have access to them anytime you want when you need a quick story in a meeting, and you have access to it here on your smart device.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, the idea, though, that, you know, we want to put those in writing. I mean, get those in writing, have those documented. I created a document on my system that is called iSpeak Stories. And what I've done with that document is I put all the stories in that I run into, whether I hear something, somebody talked about social media, or sometimes it's a story from another speaker. I'll run over to this document. It's called iSpeak Stories. And anything that's happened, anything I've read, anything I've seen, I put them there, and that becomes one of my resources so that I've got those. The other reason for document—
I'll tell you how old school I am. This is, I've got to transcribe them now electronically so that I've got them like you do.
Well, it's easier for me to search. I mean, I've now found that I can open up this document. It's about 58 pages long. It's probably got 200-300 stories in it. And I can do a quick search when I'm looking for a key word. And I'm trying to remember rapids, you know, or, you know, I'm trying to remember, I don't remember all the details. So when I open it up, I put down Zach. I put for my guide's name. I put down Buena Vista. I put down Arkansas River. I put down June 2019. I put down Widowmaker as the name of that rapid. all those details that there's no way I would have ever remembered, but documenting those is going to be key. The other thing when we document the who am I or the who are we story is by having that structure, we'll find ourselves rambling a lot less because we're now using one of those 4 structures that we just talked about. So let's do this. Let's recap those 4 structures super fast before we move on, because we're going to talk about the next story, which is a lesson learned. And you can use a lot of these here, but the first is the change. The second is the choice. The third is the common thread. And the fourth was the timeline. These are 4 of the story structures that we're going to use in our everyday story situation. So really be thinking about these. If you guys want a copy of our slides, we're going to be emailing those out later today. Tracy Singhouse, our operations manager, will be emailing out the recording link so that you guys can go back and share the recording of this webcast. And she'll also have a copy of the slides available if you want to download those so that you can reference these different types of situations that we can use. So the who am I, the who are we, 2 really great story structures. The last one, Bill, that we're going to spend some time on today is the lesson learned story. And this is one of those where we can use it to introduce ourselves. We can use it within a presentation to get a team unstuck or inspire people or move people or introduce the team to a new direction or share our values or the values of our team. And so this is one of my favorites, the one I use when I'm teaching classes and when I'm delivering keynote presentations. What's something, and you mentioned this earlier, but I really want to drive it home right now. What's something that is so important when we tell any kind of story, especially the lesson learned story?
Yeah, well, we need to know what's the point. And I mean, how many times have we been listening to someone tell a story and we mentally start asking that question, right? They're going on, and you're finally like, what's the point? Or we're saying, get to the point. Do you even have a point? And too often they don't. So the first thing we want to do then is determine what's the point I want to make. What is it the audience needs to understand? And the story will lead them to that destination.
Yep. So as we tell these lesson learned stories, we've given them structures now. We've talked about places to find them. Let's go a little bit deeper on that, because as you and I build stories, and we build stories all the time, and I'm constantly challenging myself to tell new stories. And especially now at iSpeak, we've got 10 different classes that we teach. And what I found is I start to see the same students in some of the classes. So somebody who takes our message builder class is taking our spontaneous presentations class, and then they're taking our visual storytelling class. And I can't use the same stories. So I've got to have a good opening story for each class and a good closing story. So I've really been challenging myself to develop more stories. Have you done the same?
No, I just give my stories numbers, and then I just shout out a number, and they all think of it. Oh, I remember that one, and then I'm good.
Story 6. Oh yeah, Bill, that story 6 was great.
Yeah. Well, there's lots of different types of stories, right? And each of these can have a different level of impact. So as you're looking at our slide here, we'll start at the bottom and work our way to the top. As we do so, the impact of that story will increase. So we can have the fictional story, right? These would be like fables, stories that aren't true, but can still relate a core value or a truism within it. Fables are typically stories that deal with, animals with human characteristics. For example, 2 caterpillars sitting on a tree having a nice conversation when a beautiful butterfly comes by and lands next to them, flutters its wings, and then glides off. And the first caterpillar says to his friend, I'm never becoming that. Yeah, caterpillars don't talk to each other, and change is inevitable whether you want to do it or not. It's going to happen. So yeah, even in a fictional story, and it doesn't have as heavy of an impact as a true or personal story, but it can still bring about a very important point.
No doubt.
And yeah, you've got a great example here of historical, right, Kevin?
Yeah, I do. I got this from one of my students. So the other place that I get stories is from our students as they come to our classes, and I'm constantly learning. And I've got so many different examples of historical, but this one really jumped out at me. It was the story in 1994 when Kellogg's was trying to introduce cornflakes into India. And they had spent $60 million launching this product only to find out that it was going to be a colossal failure. Now, the one key thing here, Bill, we're going to tell a couple of stories, but not a lot. That's not what people came for. They didn't come here to hear Uncle Bill and Uncle Kevin tell stories. We're teaching them how to tell the stories. I'll give you a chance. I'll give you a chance. For those that can't see it, Bill is 7 foot tall, and Bill played basketball. Bill, I'm going to ask you to tell a basketball story here in just a minute. So I'm queuing you up. You get to tell a story. Uncle Bill gets to tell a story in just a minute.
Maybe Grandpa Bill.
So this was a great historical example. And again, I always like to say time out, because at the end of the story, I say, all right, why did I tell that Kellogg story about Kellogg's investing $60 million and having it fail? Because they didn't do their due diligence. They didn't do the research that was required before jumping in with 2 feet. And before we move forward with this project, before we move forward with this new idea, let's do some due diligence. And so that's a lesson learned from this historical example. And there's so many historical examples that we can go back to. So I love the history stories. The other is telling other people's stories. Bill mentioned this, where we can hear somebody else tell the story and then we turn around and we tell it. And we don't take credit for it. We tell somebody and say, hey, I heard this in one of my classes. This is a story. And I love to get all the details. So whatever the situation might be, and I'll just give you an example. I had a friend who, I call him a friend now. He was in my 2-day class in Colorado for Dish Network. And his name was Joe. And Joe told a really moving story about him and a friend who went skiing, and he saved his friend's life. And I wrote down all the details. I said, Joe, this was so powerful. I go, I want to get my pen out. I want to write down that, okay, I'm giving you credit. Joe Oldham was his name. I'm going to give you credit. I want to write down all the details of the story because I want to replay it at some point in the future, and I want to give you credit for it, and I don't want to mess up your story by missing some of the details. And so I got his story, and I now share his story in situations. So we can do that in so many places. And then we have our own personal stories, and that's our infamous president of iSpeak, Russ Peterson. That's his face right there. But it's our personal stories, how we bring our own stories in. So Bill, I said, Grandpa Bill gets to tell a story today. Tell us your basketball story. Give me a story from college. I've heard this a couple of times, and I love it. It's one of my favorite stories that you tell. Let's hear it.
We're in a webinar, so you're going to get a shortened version of it here. Look, he's even got a slide with a basketball on it. Come on.
I knew. I was queuing you up.
I used this story group when I was talking to some leaders, those who are communicating with their teams and needing to be more effective at it. And so I share my most embarrassing moment as a collegiate basketball player. Can you imagine that? 7 feet tall, play basketball. I am playing against a team that is resided in Oregon. I'm in their gym, the old school gym. You know, there's 9,000 people screaming, none of them my fans. I'm guarding a gentleman who will go into the NBA and really have a great career. And he is just too good for me. And he's scoring every time he touches the ball. My job is to get that ball out of the basket after Steve, that's his name. After Steve scores, I'm getting the ball out of the basket, jumping out of bounds, moving away from the basket, and throwing it in as fast as I can, because they have a full court press and I want to beat that press. Steve has just scored again. I have my hand already in the net, ready to grab the ball. In the process of stepping out of bounds, my teammate is streaking down the left sideline. He's way ahead of everybody else in transition, and he wants the ball. He's wide open. He's screaming at me. I realize that if I'm going to get it to him, there's not enough time to get out of bounds and away from the basket. It'll be too late for Arnold, my teammate, to get the ball. I determine I've got to just jump out of bounds and throw it in from behind the basket, which you never do. But I lie to myself and say I can do it. So I throw it in at hip level as hard as I can to get it under that backboard. And of course, it does what it's supposed to do. It hits the backboard. It hits the backboard where that foam pad is and ricochets off the bottom of the backboard forward into the court with about 6,000 RPM backspin. So with all that spin, when the ball finally connects with the gym floor, it just pops straight up in the air about 14 feet. And then also because of all that backspin, it started to come back towards me and went swish right through their basket. So if you can picture what I've just done, I've just scored for the other team while standing out of bounds from behind their basket. 9,000 people began roaring with laughter. There's only one person not laughing, and that's me. I have embarrassed myself, my team, my school, the founding fathers of our nation. I mean, I am ready to quit. My coach calls timeout. I sit in a huddle, and I'm waiting for him to come in and start yelling and screaming at me, telling me what I did wrong and the embarrassment I've caused. When he comes into the huddle, he looks at me and he says, now that's where I stop my story. So Joe, this is kind of where you have your parenthetical insert, because I then turn to at this point, my leaders and say, you're the coach, you're the leader. What do you say? And does it have any impact on any productivity that will follow? And of course, the answer is yes. And then we talk about a lot of things, right, Joe? We teach lessons, we talk about communication styles, we do all kinds of fun activities. But what's everybody want to know? What did your coach say? So I finish the story after we go through all of those techniques. And it goes just like this. He steps into the huddle. I'm waiting for this Bobby Knight kind of a coach to start yelling and screaming and throwing stuff, because that's what he does. When he looks at me and he says, Bill, we'll tell them we've been practicing that shot. Hey, that statement took me so much by surprise that I was actually willing to get off the bench and go back in the game and try my best for the rest of the way. It also reestablished trust between me and my coach and my teammates. There's my basketball story, Kevin. My most embarrassing moment. And people ask me, is that on YouTube? And no. I'm old enough that nobody was recording anything in those days. Thank goodness, because I also wore short shorts. Nobody wants to see that either.
Yeah, that was a great story. And I want to dissect it really great, because I mean, it was so great. I mean, I want to dissect the pieces of what you did. It was so awesome. I mean, everything we've been talking about, have a point, don't let it drag on, have the details. You had me sitting at the edge of my chair, pulling me in. There's humor. Let me dive home a couple of these characteristics that we're looking for in stories. Bill incorporated in character names. He had dialogue. What did my coach say? He said, we'll tell them we've been practicing that shot. So we had the names of some of your players. You were using dialogue. The timing, not the length, although that was good too, but the timing of when you landed pauses and really pulled us in. So I love that. And then the body language, and again, I know it's hard virtually, and all of us have been doing this for the last 5 months, but you were still able to use some really great facial expressions and some hand gestures and bring all this together. So the characteristics that we teach on storytelling, awesome. So
hey, I was back in the gym again telling that story. Thanks for bringing up that sore spot.
Yeah, no, you could feel it. You could feel it. So Bill, talk us through really quick. I know we've only got a few minutes left here. We've got about just less than 5 minutes that we're going to do, but I think an important aspect that we need to talk about is structure. So we've talked about structure for the Who Am I story, and we talked about some structures for the Who Are We story. What about structures for the What's the Point story? And Steven Spielberg, the quote that's on the screen here, he says that people have forgotten how to tell a story, that stories don't have a middle or an end anymore. They usually have a beginning that never stopped beginning.
Yeah.
So what do we need to watch out for? And let's go back to those 4 structures. Which structure do you like best for telling one of these what's the point stories.
Yeah, well, yeah, and as we know, all of our presentations and even our stories are going to have an opening, they're going to have a middle, and they're going to have a close.
Yep.
And we also are going to know what the point is that I want to share. That's important because if I don't have that defined, a story can have multiple points depending on what I want to emphasize when I teach it or share it. So I actually like the situation action result. I call it SAR, that's the acronym. And so I'll have my opening, and then we're going to take a close look to describe the situation. What's the situation? I'm in the gym, I'm guarding somebody. What were the actions that, I have to take the ball out of bounds, and here's what I did. And as a result, here's what happened. And here's what I've learned in this, in that really leader communication can take a bad scenario and make it a learning experience and help people grow. And so the situation action result works really well for me. I like it.
Yeah, and I love how the result in your story really became the close, the what happened, the what was learned. You tie that into the closing. And again, so many places. I know I've heard you use what I call the bookend version of that story. You use it to start your class, and then you teach, and then you come back to that story at the end of the day. So starts at 8:30 with that story, you kick off the class, and then you're wrapping up at 4:30 with the rest of the story. I saw in the chat you'd mentioned Paul Harvey earlier, and
Right.
you do a great Paul Harvey impersonation there with that story. So
Good
I
day.
love the structure and the timing. Again, really want to just drive this home that we don't want it to ramble. We don't need people, and they do that. They get off track, and then they start talking, and next thing you know, it's like, what was the story? And what was the point of the story? And you know what? I got to go. I got a hard stop here at this meeting to go to my next meeting. And so it's just, we can get lost. So that 1 to 3 minutes becomes that real key to what we want to do.
Yeah.
Bill, this has been so much fun. I mean, I swear this hour has just flown by. So we've got something for the group. I want to introduce this, and then, well, actually, you can introduce it, and I'll tell them about our other stuff. So tell us about, we have a gift for them.
Yeah, go to our www.ispeak.com/story, and group, we have this free gift that is going to show you corporate storytelling templates, and there are 6 of them that's there for you. So we want you to jump on there, grab that. It's a free download, and it'll go through all those templates. So yeah, grab that there. Thank you, Kevin, putting it in the chat for us. That's a free gift. Go get it. Use it. You'll love it.
Yeah, you will. It's got the 4 that we've talked about in this webcast, plus a couple of extras. And I think it's fair. We've given you an hour version of everything here. If you love this topic and you want to learn more, the workshop version of this is 7 hours, and you get to practice not only, and there's so much more than what we've covered. There's so many more details, and you get to write a story in class. You get to deliver it in class, get live coaching and feedback from your peers and from the instructor. And you get to do that 2 and sometimes 3 times, depending on the number of people in our classes. So it is a great full day class. And it is one of all of these classes. We've got these 8 versions right here.
Yes,
and
operators are standing by. Call
are you ready? Yeah,
get in
call Bill. Let me type Bill's cell number in the chat. I was trying to read what you were doing with the phone. And so there's these 8 classes. Come join us for one of these. If there's something that you're interested in, we've got so much information on the iSpeak website. Dara Kukla, who I've known for 20 years, is phenomenal. She is one of the best people you'll ever work with in terms of just understanding your business and really helping connect you with the right class for your organization. So contact Dara. We'll put all of this information in the follow-up email for you. So share this information. We've got free webinars that we're offering every month through the end of the year. So go to the iSpeak website /webinars, ispeak.com/webinars, and that's where you'll see the full list of all the webinars that we're offering, and connect with us on the iSpeak website. And Bill, I want to say thanks. Close this out. Thanks everybody for spending and investing your hour with us.
Yeah. Good luck storytelling. Thank you, group.
Thanks, everybody.
just outside of Boston. As I run to find the other sun, and I'm leaving more behind than I care to talk about. Just more pain than this heart and hand